Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 554. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. And it's good to have all three of us together again.
Yeah. Together again. It's
Yeah.
the triangle of sadness.
Are we the triangle of sadness? Is that what the movie's about? Is that our biography?
It's 100% not what it's about.
Oh, okay.
I
Bummer.
will tell you
Is
that.
Triangle of Sadness the one about a genie?
No. That's
That's the
different
Idris Elba
movie.
one that you saw.
that's something else. I like that movie too, but I forget what that one's called already.
Is Triangle of Sadness about the Bermuda Triangle?
No, but it
okay.
does take place on a yacht.
Oh,
It's like out in the ocean.
it's a boating movie.
Sure.
Is the
Okay.
sail the Triangle of Sadness?
There's no sails on this boat.
Oh,
so
okay. Bummer.
No, I will tell you, no spoilers here, but they do define the triangle of sadness within maybe the first 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then they never bring it up again.
Oh, it's like a one and done kind of thing.
Mhm.
Oh, Triangle of Sadness is by the guy who did The Square and Force Majeure.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, is this
I
part
bet
of his
that's awesome.
this part of his Polygon trilogy?
Don't know what that is.
Okay.
So maybe.
Zach got the joke.
Oh, triangle, square,
Yeah.
and force majeure. How does
No,
that fit in there?
No, this is part of his trilogy. This is number 2 of the
Oh.
Polygon trilogy.
Okay, there's one more
Yeah.
left. is
Yeah,
what
next
you're
one's gonna
saying.
be
The
like the
Pentagram.
Octagon of Fear. Yeah, Pentagram. I like that. It's a horror movie.
All right, I get
Yeah.
it. Takes me a little bit. The best jokes are the ones you have to explain, for sure.
Oh, that's the funniest.
Definitely.
Speaking of jokes,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna take us on a little non-movie related tangent, but something that's Cinerealist related.
Oh, okay.
Have you guys been watching the newest season of Impractical Jokers, season 9?
I've never watched an Impractical Joker on its first run airing.
Okay.
Have you, Zach?
No.
All right. Well, so season 9 hit HBO Max, I don't know, in the last several months. I just found it. And
Okay.
I was watching it, and like the first 15 episodes are your as expected Impractical Jokers fare. Like funny, but kind of what you expect. And then all of a sudden, like episode 15 or 20, they change everything. Like the intro, the format, it all changes. And Joe Gatto is out.
Yeah.
And apparently
and-
he left the show.
I knew that
He did.
happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know he left mid-season. But it's interesting. Like the remaining 3 guys, they kept the show going, but they're trying all different stuff now. Like it's almost refreshing that they're just doing like new bits, and they're bringing on like special guests every episode to be the 4th.
Mhm.
So like Eric Andre was their special guest in the first one without Joe Gatto, and he's funny. He's a funny guy. So
Yeah, the rumor among the fandom is that Joe was not excited about his contract.
okay.
And in the past, they've all stuck together.
Mhm.
But this time, he was being unreasonable. And the other guys were like, we agree. You're the only one that doesn't.
Mhm.
So it's your choice. You either come down to where we are, which we think is fair, or they're not going to hire you again.
Right. We'll just have 3 people on the
And-
show.
And he decided, well, then they're not going to hire me again. And the other guys were like, sorry, we're not going to hold at what you're asking for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, supposedly. But then they publicly blamed it on his divorce.
Yeah, I was reading about, I mean, not to dig too much into his personal life, but that seemed to be the narrative, was he had personal things happening.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they said. I'm not digging. That's literally what they said.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying is like I'm not gonna then be like, well, what happened with his wife? I'm not gonna get into his personal life, but that's what they said. Okay.
Sure. It must have been so hard to be a cast member of Friends. Like, remember back in the day? I don't know if you guys remember. You might be too young, but back
Oh,
in
yeah,
the day
I
when
remember.
Friends was really big, and
I've
they
heard
were
of
like,
Friends. Yeah, I'm aware of the
sure,
the sitcom.
$1 million an episode, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it was $1 million an episode per friend, so it was like
Yes.
$6 million an episode, which is insane for a half an hour television show. Like there are some episodes where Joey has like 4 lines, and he got $1 million
Mhm.
for 4 lines.
Yeah.
That's
So,
Oh, yeah.
that's $250 for like how you doing.
yeah, and all much like Impractical Jokers, they just need one person to be happy with the amount of money. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then the other ones have to move down to them or else break up the band type of thing. And the friends knew what they had, I guess.
Yeah, they stuck together. Do you
Yeah.
guys know what the Impractical Jokers make an episode?
I'm
I don't, but I'll guess.
gonna say it's
guess.
less than
Yeah.
$1 million.
It's definitely less than $1 million.
Wow.
But I bet it's like, I mean, they replay that show so much. It practically is the channel. So
Oh, on True TV. Yeah.
I bet it's way
this-
more now than it was before. And
This
now,
does not include any residuals. This is just
Sure.
for the season, per episode.
I know
don't-
that the comic book men made like 40 grand a season and was nowhere near as popular. So I'm guessing each individual Impractical Joker gets
Per
300 per episode?
Per
How many
episode.
episodes are there in a season?
like 20 to 30, depending on what they're doing.
Okay, then I'm going to say 10,000 per episode.
Yeah, I was thinking as low as 10, as high as 50. That's my range.
Okay. And if you're Joe Gatto, what number are you going to quit if you don't make?
I'm gonna say 50 was his number.
50 per episode. If he was offered 50 per episode and walked away from that, I
Oh,
don't
no.
know what is wrong with
I'm
that
sorry, that's
guy.
what he wanted. You're saying what he was offered. Okay, I'm gonna say he was offered, I don't know, 25 an episode and walked away.
25,000?
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not really don't know very well TV payment schedules, so I could be
Yeah,
way
I don't
off
know
here.
either, but my guess is 10,000 per episode.
They make 50,000 per episode.
They do make 50 per episode.
50,000 per episode.
Yeah.
So maybe he
I
wanted like
guarantee you-
75 or something.
Season 1 they didn't make that.
Of course not.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
not a chance.
I mean, I don't even think like well into the series they made what they
In
make today.
2015, they made 26,000 an episode.
Yeah. that
Okay.
makes sense.
Now, that being said, this article does not say if they have to split the 50,000 or if it's 50,000 each.
I would assume
Nope,
it's
each of the guys, each of the
Okay.
guys makes 50,000 per episode. So
Okay.
that's pretty good. That's not bad.
Hey, that's considering what they're doing. That's good money. I mean, they're
I'll
just
take it.
goofing around.
Right, yeah. It's
James and I went to their live show.
Oh, how was the
Yeah.
live show?
It was a lot of fun.
Was
good.
there a punishment happening at the time or anything extracurricular?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
I don't remember much from it, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good time, but I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't spend the money again.
Well, not without Joe Gatto.
I don't really care about Joe Gatto.
You don't care about Joe?
Honestly, I don't think I've really watched the show in earnest since that awful movie came out.
The movie was bad. Have you seen it,
Kind of
Kyle?
killed it
No,
for me a little
I
bit.
haven't. Just because you guys talk so poorly of the movie. Your review of the movie is what got me onto the show. I mean, it also happened that the pandemic happened at the same time, so it was kind of like a perfect storm of, well, I have lots of time and everything's terrible, so I'm going to watch
Sure.
stupid TV. But I've never seen the movie. But James, I do think you should at least like log on HBO Max, go to season 9, go to like those last 10 episodes and just watch one of them of just the 3 guys with their special guest.
Okay.
And it's a different vibe than the Joe Gatto years.
All right. I'm into it. Sign me up. How come only I have to do it? Zach gets a free pass.
I don't know if Zach watches TV on HBO Max.
Oh, okay. That's fair enough.
So Zach, however you choose to watch TV, find season 9, go to those last 10 episodes, check one out.
I watched a segment on YouTube like 2 days ago that had the new graphics. That's the only reason I knew.
Oh,
they had
okay,
new
yeah.
graphics. And I had heard about the Joe Gatto thing. But anyway, welcome to episode 554 of the Cinereelists. We're going to talk All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a new movie available on Netflix. And we're also going to run down our top 10 war movies. Before we get into those things, though, I need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Cinereelists, REEL with an S on the end, and subscribe there and watch while you listen. You could also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. Check it out. Also, leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that. If you have not done that yet, please just take a moment while you're listening right now. Just pop open your app on your phone if you're on an Apple device and leave us a review while you listen to us. And 5 stars only. You could also send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com with a comment, question, list suggestion, movie suggestion, any of those kinds of things. We appreciate receiving via email, and we will discuss on the podcast. Anything else we need to touch on before we start? All Quiet on the Western Front.
All quiet here.
No.
Okay.
No. Go for
Great. Awesome. We're going to talk All Quiet on the Western Front, which is streaming on Netflix now. And we're going to do that. Not stream it. We're going to talk about it right after this clip.
Feuerwalze. Was? Alle paar Minuten verschiebt sich das Granatfeuer nach vorne und direkt dahinter rückt die Infanterie nach.
Was heißt das?
Sie kommen.
That was All Quiet on the Western Front, a 2022 German epic anti-war film based on the 1929 novel of the same name. This movie was directed by Edward Berger, and it stars Felix Kammerer, Albrecht Schuch, Daniel Bruhl,
That
and
one you should get.
Sebastian Holt,
it.
amongst others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for All Quiet on the Western Front is a young German soldier's terrifying experiences and distress on the Western Front during World War I. It's more the premise than the plot, but okay.
Is that a complete sentence?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
It's not? A young German
There's no-
soldier's terrifying experiences and distress on the
There's no verb.
Western Front during World War I.
Isn't during your
There's no
verb?
verb.
A young
No,
German
during
soldier
is-
isn't the verb?
No, it's a subject.
Hmm.
Well, IMDb, the database you can edit.
It'd be like a young German soldier's terrifying experiences play out on the Western. That would be a verb.
All right.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Yeah. Not a verb.
This is the grammar podcast, evidently.
But we can say that this is about a young German soldier who joins the German army during
Right.
World War I and experiences the atrocities of war.
Sure.
There
How
you go.
much of the movie did you watch before you realized you're watching the German side of the war?
Well, this movie's been made before in 1930, which I've seen that version. So I knew that this was a movie from the German perspective.
I mean, this week I watched the original like a day or two before I watched this new one. And I will say I got like probably a ridiculous amount in before I realized they were German,
Mm-hmm.
because that movie's in English. Or at
Yeah.
least the version
Yes.
I watched had English language. Everybody was speaking English. And so at some point I was like, oh, they're German speaking English. I get it.
Mhm.
So by the time I watched this one, I knew not only are they speaking German from frame one, but I came into it knowing this was going to be about Germans. So
And
the 1931s really did a snow job on me, though. I was very fooled.
I think that's what's interesting about this movie of many things is that it is, from the perspective of who was the aggressor in World War One.
Mhm.
Usually when we get war movies, it's, from either the American perspective or whoever won the war or, from the quote unquote good guy side of things.
Mhm.
In this case, we're seeing if you want to make it black and white, the bad guys, their perspective, but much more focused on the individual experience and not the whole.
Yeah, you're seeing it from the perspective of the side that lost.
Yes. But also from a, more on the ground perspective and not just like a,
Mhm.
overall. There's a little political, we can talk about that too, a little political maneuver in this movie, but generally speaking,
Mhm.
we're focused on like the individual soldiers and their experiences.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what do you guys think of All Quiet on the Western Front?
I enjoyed that it started completely quiet.
I don't
Like,
remember how it
you know,
started.
it starts completely silently,
Mhm.
and then you see like a fox, I think, in a den or whatever, and then they go to a battlefield where a bunch of people are dying. It starts with that one soldier that dies, and then his coat goes off to be repatched.
Oh, like
Mm.
Heinrich or something was his name?
Yeah.
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 And so yeah, I enjoyed that it started quiet. I had to force myself to not check my sound settings because I was like, I'm sure it's just quiet because it's called All Quiet on the Western Front. But for like 30 seconds, you're just left in silence.
Yeah, that following the clothes of fallen soldiers and having it be patched up to go to the next soldiers
Mhm.
is like a pretty effective visual to put in perspective how the war is going,
Right.
basically.
To see them mending bullet holes and then handing that coat off to a new young recruit and say, here you go.
Right. Yeah. It's a pretty sobering idea, much less string of visuals that gets you into the story. Doesn't give you much hope for anybody who has to wear that uniform. That's for sure.
No, but it lets you know. I mean, that first opening battle is your traditional trench warfare. Everyone,
Mhm.
up over the barricades into the mud and then get immediately blown up and shot. So it kind of gives you an idea right away of what kind of movie you're getting yourself into.
I wonder how they sold that to the soldiers. Like if they tried to tell you it was an honor to wear a fallen soldier's jacket,
Well, so
or
if you remember when the main character, who do we follow? What's his name? It starts with the P. Paul.
I don't remember.
I want to say Paul. When Paul gets
Paul.
the jacket, he notices the former soldier's name tag in it, and he comes back
Mhm.
and says, "Oh, I think I have someone else's jacket." And then the commander who handles him says, "Oh, they always make these mistakes." And he just rips out the tag and hands it back to him and drops it on the ground. And you see there's a pile of tags on the ground.
Yeah.
So I don't think
He says, "Oh, it must have been too small for the last guy, so
Yeah.
he returned it or something."
So I don't think they're telling them like, "Hey, a guy died in this. Go have fun." Like, To
Sure.
Paul, this is all brand new gear.
I guess. I mean, when they were patching them, some of them were like serious patches because of bullet holes.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're really dumb. I can't
I mean,
imagine
Well,
some people
those
weren't
boys all were really naive, weren't they? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's true.
how they start this movie, they're completely naive about what war was going to be like.
Yeah,
Right.
they thought they'd be marching in Paris in a couple of weeks, and that this would be a walk in the park.
Mhm.
Y-
Yeah.
You're also handed a bundle. They don't like hold the jacket up, whip it around, let you inspect it. You're kind of just given a bundle of clothing. So even if there are patches, by the time you get dressed,
Mhm.
you're not going to notice. You're not going to go back and say, "Hey, this one's broken," or "I need a new jacket."
Yeah.
Sure. That's true. So Zach liked the opening.
So I would say my overall
Uh-huh.
of this film is the film is certainly like the horrors of war kind of movie.
Mhm.
And while effective, I would say, It's certainly nothing new. I was just like, okay, yeah, war is horrifying and terrible, right?
Mhm.
And I think I already knew that. You know what I mean? And so now I'm just seeing it play out again, just how awful World War One was. And it's just like, I don't know. It seemed unnecessary because it didn't give me too much new, you know?
Mhm.
And then the the enthusiasm at first of the main characters was so kind of over the top and forced, you know? They were like caricatures more than like real authentic people to me. And then various, bad things happen to them and they sober up pretty quickly. And it's just, I mean, I think having movies that show the horrors of war is important, but I don't know. I guess at this point, I've seen this kind of thing before, and I don't know if this movie gave me too much new to the genre. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I like some of the music cues; those were novel.
Yeah, the one of the things I noticed right away after the silence was how modern the music sounded and how sparse it was. And it seemed to be
Mhm.
a combination of like, just these very loud percussive snare drum sounds, which sort of mimicked a gunfire. And then all of a sudden, like these almost electronic sounds that gave me Alex Garland vibes at times. And
Hmm.
I thought that was really interesting, just to kind of give you this dissonant electronic sound and these, more traditional snare drum sounds were really amped up for a movie that takes place 100 years ago. They weren't trying to play, traditional marching band or whatever music you might expect to hear in a movie of this era.
Yeah, I really liked the score itself. I'm not sure I could pick any of it out. I just remember it being not in the way of what was going on, and then occasionally, like, to mark a scene change or an attitude change or a shift in tone one way or another, they would almost strike a drum, but it wasn't a drum. What did you call it, Kyle? Like a
Uh,
cymbal or something like
It
that?
was
I
it was
don't
a
know what it
snare. It's a
was.
snare drum. It
A
could be some
snare,
sort of
yeah.
percussive instrument. You just call
Sure.
it percussion. It's
It
your
wasn't
catch-all.
like what you'd expect. Like, it wasn't Inception style, like some really loud, low rumble drum. It was like a different drum than what I would have expected.
Like
Um,
a timpani.
sure. Why
I'm
not?
just gonna throw drums at James. He keeps agreeing with me.
Like, I know the
This
difference.
sounds more like a djembe or
Sure.
a bass drum turned on its side.
I've been waiting for James to play this sound.
Don't make me pull this up.
Typical, like, cool guy band teacher, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this movie. Having watched the original just a few days before watching this new version, I will say that there's a lot of merit to the original. I can't help but compare the two because that's why I watched them, so I could compare the two. Um, the the original for the time is kind of amazing. Like, I was very impressed, just like the logistics behind what they did in that movie. It's kind of insane when you consider it was the early 1930s that they made that movie. And it kind of flips between shots that look like a stage play, which are not my favorite, no matter what the movie is, and shots that absolutely don't look like a stage play, that look like they're ripped out of an action movie that was made today. And that's pretty impressive. I'll also, in the original 1930s version, say I was also impressed at just how far they push what they put on screen as far as the horrors of war. Like, there's almost worse things in the one from 1930 than the one that came out in 2022 from a visual perspective. There's not as much, but like what they actually show is kind of more effective in the 1930s one. Like, there's just an extended sequence towards the beginning of like a machine gun just like mowing the enemy down as it just moves back and forth, just waves of guys just getting hit in the knees by a machine gun and stuff like that. There's a shot of like hands holding onto barbed wire
Oh,
and like
yeah.
there's no body connected to it and stuff like that. That just is shocking to me in the year 2022 that this film from 1930, that's in there. And that type of stuff wasn't in the 2022 version. Now there's other stuff, but those specific images weren't in this one, which I was surprised by. But there's other things, like I was easily more emotionally attached to Paul in this new version. I think it does a better job of like following one soldier and not making the soldiers feel like caricatures, especially when it really counts, when you're supposed to care when they're actually in the war and coming to terms with the new reality that they're in, basically. I think the newer version does that a lot better than the old version. But if you want just kind of like a more of like a dissertation style war is bad, I think the 1930s does a better version of that. That being said, the 2022 version, the new version, just benefits so much from modern filmmaking. It's just so, not only is it more focused on a smaller amount of characters, but it also brings in like the characters, the upper brass characters who are like trying to convince their superiors that they should surrender, essentially, but the superiors don't want to surrender. They want to like stop the war without surrendering somehow. And France, their enemy in the movie, doesn't want it that way. They're like, you invaded us, and if you're done, then you're quitting, and we want that on paper. And so that is barely represented in the original. So I like that element. And I bought the friendships more in the 2022 version. And that just might be because it's more focused on a smaller group of guys, or it's just the script is I think they just reworked thing. I don't know what the book says, so maybe this follows closer to the book than the earlier version, or maybe the earlier version does and they made changes for this one. Couldn't tell you. But the new one, I got more attached to the characters.
So I had to do some Wikipedia reading to remind myself of the 1930 version. And then I also read a quick plot summary of the book, 1929 book. And the 1930 version is pretty 1-to-1 to the book.
Okay.
Where this one felt like a much looser adaptation. Like you're still following a character named Paul. There's still a lot of the character names are the same, a lot of the events are the same, but there's a lot changed too. Right, all the stuff with Daniel Bruhl trying to negotiate peace and the generals, that was definitely added a lot more to this. Zach, what did you think about them adding that element of the sort of the political side of the war?
It kind of felt like they wanted to include more of a message, like a more multi-layered message to the film by including that. Which I don't know. I think I was fine with, but the movie's so long.
Yeah, it kind of took me out of it because I was so invested in Paul and his friends and the sort of horrifying journey that he was going on. And then we would cut to a train car. And obviously there's a juxtaposition of like, he and his friends are starving and stealing goose versus these generals are eating croissants at a train car. And, which, right, that's nothing new. But it kind of took me out of that moment of focusing on this one soldier. So like, oh, let's see what, the politicians are up to. And yeah, it was definitely trying to push this, war is terrible for everyone kind of story, but it didn't add anything new to me versus what we saw like the 1930 version.
Yeah, and I think what Zach said is true, that I don't think there's anything in this that I haven't seen in other movies. But I also think that people won't watch that 1930s movie. You know what I mean? People won't watch The Painted Bird or
Paths of Glory.
Or Paths of Glory. Well, I'm thinking like The Painted Bird or what's that other movie that's like anti-war about a kid in peril?
Come and see.
Like the
Come and
white-
See.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
come and see. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of anti-war movies out there that people won't watch because they're just too extreme, or they won't watch because they're too old, or any of those types of things. And I think there's still a place for anti-war movies. We might be overloaded on them and have seen everything that to be seen in this genre. But I think as a remake of a really old movie, I think this might attract more eyeball just by the nature of being on Netflix. It'll attract more eyeballs, and maybe its message, which I think it held from the original to this one, might get to more people. Maybe that's where its merit lies, beyond whether it was new to us. Because I agree, I've seen most of everything that was in this movie.
I mean, for
At one point
me,
or another.
the tanks, that whole middle battle with like the
Mhm.
tanks go over the trenches and then the flamethrowers following that was something I had not seen in a World War One movie before. I mean, we've maybe seen tanks, but nothing as like how those tanks are framed as these like just machines of death slowly approaching the soldiers, them realizing we
Unstoppable.
don't stand a chance. And then
Sure.
a brigade of flamethrowers behind them to like clean up anything the tanks miss. I thought that sequence, that was probably my favorite sequence of the entire movie. Just the most harrowing, but also the most riveting, because
Mhm.
that was something that I had not seen in a World War One movie before.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing too many movies too where there just weren't any Americans. I don't know. At least with like this type of trench
Mhm.
battle, it feels like we're always backing Americans. We're always like rooting for the American on some level. And in this situation, you're rooting for personalities or people instead of who they're fighting for.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could just as easily have been following a French soldier, and if they invested enough time and made it a good enough story, we'd have been invested in the story behind those people too. Um, but yeah, I think it's interesting that it's showing the perspective of somebody who did not necessarily make the decision to be in this fight. They made the decision in that they signed up to go, but they didn't make, you know what I mean? But
And
they didn't
Yeah.
make,
they were swept up in nationalism and they thought, serve my
Sure.
country, be a hero, be home in a couple of weeks.
right. And towards the end, they're doing it because if you don't, you get shot. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
At that point, they're not making the decision anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just following orders because the alternative is you get shot. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a nice bit of modern remake magic.
I really
How
liked.
about you, Kyle? I
Yeah,
haven't really
I
heard.
realize I haven't gotten too much into it. I think you guys have probably picked up that I like this a lot too. I liked it very much. I found it very effective as a another horror of war movie. Right. We this group of people have seen a lot of these, but I agree, James. I don't know if a lot of your average moviegoer has seen a lot of movies of this caliber and of this message. I think if you ask a lot of people, like, what World War One movie have you seen? Wonder Woman will probably come up. Like,
Yeah, or
World
maybe
War.
1917. I think that got some play.
True. 1970. That's a good point. Yeah, that's probably.
But that's recent too. I mean,
Yeah.
there aren't too many really.
And I don't remember 1917 being as brutal as this movie is.
I
It's
think
pretty brutal.
it's brutal, but it's more like, can this one guy survive?
Yeah.
Not like, oh, all is hopeless.
I guess I was so
You know what I
distracted by
mean?
the fake wonderness of it all that the message was lost on me. He's actually rolling his eyes hard right now. I'm gonna say I think 1917 bungled its message by trying to make it. You could have made it 12 really long shots but still have cuts. It did not need to be a constant wonder. I think for me, I know I'm not reviewing 1917. Let's move on here. I apologize.
I don't feel like 1917 had a message. I mean, I'm sure they'd have like sub messages, but I think it was an action movie, right? I don't think it was like making some hardline statement.
Right.
I think
yeah.
it's trying to show this harrowing journey, and it kind of flips the main character on you. We'll just say that.
Sure. But like,
And you think that was bungled because of it wasn't a true wonder? You're like, oh, they flipped the main character, but I saw it coming because they
No.
didn't do a true wonder.
I just found it distracting. I found the unnecessary need for it to be a wonder to be distracting to what was overall a good story and a good action movie. It was unnecessary.
If I just Kyle, if I just went through that movie and I just cut 10 seconds 12 times in the film so that it has a jump cut 12 times, would you like love this film so much more?
I don't know if I love it, but I might enjoy it more. Yes. Yeah.
Just cut out 10 seconds every now and then so there's a jump cut for you.
Make me a Kyle cut of 1917. I'll watch it again. I'll be like, wow, this is what did I miss? I still gave 1917 4 stars. Like, I didn't hate the movie or anything. I just thought
you just thought it bungled its message.
Yeah, bungled the mess. I thought I thought it bungled the approach. It was unnecessary for it to be a wonder. I understand
If it's
why
not
they
on the
did it.
page, it's not on the stage.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, back to All Quiet on the Western Front.
all right.
I really like this movie. I thought it was effective. I like that you're shown these battles, but you're not told what they are. There's no cards saying like, "Oh, this is the battle of." I don't even know any of the famous battles of World War One. The soldiers aren't told anything. It's like you're in this trench, go take that trench over there, and it just kind of gives you the insignificance of it all. And even at the end, it tells you how little ground was gained through the whole thing. So there's definitely this sense of futility throughout the movie,
Sure.
which I thought was very effective and not bungled because they gave cuts.
Yeah, and there's really no wins in the movie, right? Like there's no moment where something goes well for the soldiers and they
Right.
celebrate.
There's
like other than people signing documents and the war being over.
Yeah.
Like there's no win for these soldiers.
And this is a pretty humorless movie overall. Like, even though you have this group of friends, they're ripped apart figuratively and literally pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no, they're maybe sing a couple songs together, have a couple jokes about, some farmer girls walking by. But beyond that, it's a pretty dour movie throughout.
I agree. And that's by design. For sure.
Because war is hell.
Zach, you're being really quiet. You disliked this, right? You disliked it, or it's just unnecessary to exist in your world, basically.
Zach, do you wish it was a wonder? Would it be better if it was all like just
there's
tied
too many
together?
edits. Too many edits. No,
he wanted 18 real-time months to pass by.
It felt like that. No, it's just like, yeah, it was awful, right? I mean, everything was terrible and it was just really bad for 2.5 hours. And it was like, yeah, it is really bad for sure. You shouldn't have signed up for this war. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It was just like, this is awful and nothing.
Way to blame the victim, Zach.
The German soldier in World War One.
Yeah,
I mean
the soldier. I don't think it doesn't matter what side the soldier was on. It's the soldier.
Yeah, I mean, not to defend German soldiers, but they're young, right? I mean, we have this, not to get too political, but we have this problem here in the United States too. It's like there's a marketing message here to try to get you to sign up for something, and they do not give you all the information up front as far as what the actual job might entail. You know what I mean? They choose not to focus on that, and then throw every other incentive at you to get you to sign on the dotted line. And then maybe it'll work out the way they said it works out, but it also might not work out that way. And so I'm not trying to defend German soldiers from 100 years ago, but maybe they were lied to.
I also don't think German soldiers from 100 years ago are that much different than American soldiers or French soldiers from 100 years ago. Like, maybe politically the sides were different, but I think when you get down to like the soldiers, there's not a lot of difference between them.
As far as what was told to them.
What was told to them, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, they were the side of the aggressor, but it's also...
I'm just saying, we're watching, well done filmmaking of just like, well, this is awful. And it's, it stays that way. I don't know what I'm rooting for necessarily. in the movie? Like, what do I want to have happen?
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're rooting for Paul.
Well,
to
how'd that work
survive
out?
this.
Well, well, I don't know. I'm not going to spoil the end to this movie.
I think you're rooting for anything good to happen.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's
on some
a shame.
level.
So I don't know. So I mean, the movie was well done. It was interesting. It was, but I don't know. Did I enjoy watching it? No.
Sure.
I mean, it's not
Are
a
there-
movie I'm gonna like rush out and watch again next week or purchase, but I mean, just because I didn't enjoy it like I enjoy, I don't know, Jurassic Park doesn't mean I'm gonna be down on it.
I think it's really well made. I think its intentions are clear, and I think it is maybe the most accessible version of that message or that intention that I've seen.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
So
I haven't seen Come and See. I know that's a very hard watch with similar themes. I've seen The Painted
Yeah.
Bird, and that was brutal, but also got its point across. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's just one of those movies that you're probably only going to want to watch once for your own psyche. And whether you needed it or not, the message was reiterated.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how fleshed out I felt the characters were
in this one.
in this one.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the guy with the glasses.
Mhm.
Tell me about him.
He has
Well,
glasses.
I mean, spoiler.
Yeah, tell me what else.
He doesn't
He's got
last very
glasses.
long. He is the
But just
guy.
like-
he is the one guy out of the group that they show that clearly was not prepared. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
literally, they're in the bunker, like surviving the first pass, and that guy is just losing it and saying
Mhm.
he's got to go home, that he's not supposed to be there and stuff like that. So I agree. We didn't really get to know his hobbies and interests, but I understood that of all of them, he was very innocent in what was going on.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
think Paul and was Katz the other guy who he met when they got to the trenches.
Kat's the guy who lasts with him the
Yeah.
longest, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, like those are your, I guess, your two primary characters, and those are the ones who get backstories and a little more fleshed out. And I think
Yeah.
the friendship group is just kind of cannon fodder for Paul to be put through misery, put through the ringer.
Yeah. We're just not given very much about them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
You know, the farmer guy. What do we know about him?
I don't know if we need a lot about them. Like, we know that Paul is friends with them. We know that they're a tight group, and then we know that, and this was spoiler here, as they each die, that you're right, more and more rips at Paul. I think Paul's the focus here. So I
Mhm.
didn't need to know about like, oh, where's the farmer kid from? Hey, we know they're all from like the same school. We knew they grew up together.
Well, I don't need to know what their birth certificate says, but if Paul is our audience surrogate, right?
Yeah.
Like we're experiencing the film as he's experiencing the film. If we want to experience what he's feeling, if we care about those characters the same way he does, the film's going to be a lot more effective. And I just think that a different film might have made us care about each one of those characters a little bit more, so that as they die, we care for more than a reason just that Paul cares. Like we care for the same reason Paul cares. But we didn't get that in this movie.
See, I can empathize with Paul because I have, no. Like, I guess for me, Paul's reaction was enough because I saw Paul being distraught over the death of these friends. That was enough for me to, like, was I reacting emotionally like Paul was? No. But did I get the sense of, okay, this is something devastating for him? Yes.
Yeah, I think I empathize too, but I wouldn't say I was putting myself in his shoes to feel his emotions.
Yeah.
And there are movies that can make me do that, whether I want to or not. This movie didn't do that to me. For what that's worth. I don't know if it was
Yeah.
trying to, though, either. Like 1917, kind of by its design, kind of makes you do that.
Yeah.
Just by its presentation, digital edits or not. Whereas this one is you're just watching a story unfold really traditionally, like well-made traditional, but like traditional as in within the last 50 years. This is how movies have been made. It's just better color grading and clearer picture.
Yeah, but like in 1917, for example, we get the like right away. We're told we're shown the differences between these two characters, right? That we're following, and that one of them, their motivation is about their brother, right? Their brother is in the company that they're trying to save,
Yeah.
and so his motivation is motivated by his love for his brother. So we care about him because he cares about his brother, and then the other character doesn't really care. But we then care for him because he feels this duty to care about the other guy's brother. You know what I mean? So like we're living in like their motivations and we understand them. With this movie, it's just like, yeah, they're friends and we're told that. You know what I mean? But like friend C dies and then friend B dies, and it's like I feel bad for friend B. You know what I mean? I
Well,
don't
but-
know.
I mean, is that not a motivation though? Like, because in 1917 they're not friends, so they need that connection of, oh, I also care for this duty to your brother. But in this movie, they're friends, and I don't think we need more than that.
Yeah,
I don't
it
think it's any
just felt a
difference
little
in
generic to me.
1917.
No, it just felt a little generic to me.
Okay.
Whereas like I care about the relationships because they're exploring and building them in 1917 as the movie's going on. Whereas in this movie, we're just told they're friends, and so someone's gonna be sad if they die. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta do something while we're showing them walking from point A to point B. So if you had a cut, you could just move on.
We could skip all that.
Exactly. It's
Motivating
Get to the good
stuff,
stuff. One change that this adaptation did that I kind of missed from the 1930 version was the 1930 version has a scene where Paul goes home for a brief moment and like he visits his family, and his family is like basically absorbing all the propaganda and being like, oh, hey, we're winning, how's it going? And like they're all you rah rah rah. And then he also goes to see his professor. And remember in this movie, the professor is the one who gives that speech at the beginning about how like you will serve your country and, you know, live as heroes, and tells his professor about what he's been experiencing. And then his professor like calls him a coward and kind of berates him for, you know, speaking the truth. And I thought that was I thought that was a more interesting side of the propaganda story from that version than we got with the political machinations propaganda that we saw in the 2022 version.
Yeah, I mean, by omitting that, they don't really show in this version any perspective from like the homeland other than military superiors
Right.
not wanting to give up. But there's no like, what do the common people think of the war type of stuff.
And how is the propaganda being presented to them?
Yeah. That as a concept, I wouldn't have minded being translated over here. But in the original, that's when it turns into stage play for me. So I was happy to not have that in this.
I mean, that's probably more the presentation though of it being.
That's what I mean. Like
yeah.
the presentation, those were the moments in the old version where I was like, okay, can we get back to non-stage play type stuff?
Yeah.
And it's a pretty long, it's like 45 minutes of no.
James, I have a question.
Yes.
Apart from forget movies for a second, do you
Okay.
enjoy stage plays?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to a
at
play,
a theater? Yeah.
I mean, there's movies that have that presentation that can work on me. The Sound of Music, if you watch it, it's the camera's always on one side of the room. You know what I mean? It's not circling what's her name until she's on a hill. Then
Julie
it's circling
Andrews.
her. But anytime they're indoors,
Dame
it's
Julie
all,
Andrews.
yeah, it's all very much, stage play-esque. There's lots of movies that very much feel like a stage play that I like. So I'm not against it, but it's got to like really have other things going for it for me to be able to overcome the resistance, I would say.
Totally.
I mean, even the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. If you watch that movie, a lot of it feels kind of like a stage play. But yeah, the farther back you go, the bigger the chance it's going to be like that for me.
James doesn't realize what a big fan of the Steadicam he really is.
Oh, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of modern filmmaking, and I respect what came before it. That doesn't mean I have to like it more.
But are bored by it.
It doesn't mean I have to like it more, but I do understand that that had to come first before the techniques that, I mean, like, just the idea that if you wanted to be a director in the 1930s, the chance that you could even watch a bunch of stuff to learn from it was it was hard to just watch things. Whereas today, you literally have 100 years worth of filmmaking technique that you could ingest and learn from, and before you even picked up a camera yourself. And that, I think that type of environment, touched with access to technology and better chances for education, is obviously going to end up in better movies. That doesn't mean there aren't some great ones that have never been eclipsed, or that are so unique they can't be doubled. But I think in this case, this very one specific case, I like the new one.
I like this version better, too.
Yeah. Zach, have you seen the original?
Yeah.
Which,
remember
which
it
do
at
you
all?
like better?
I didn't care for it a ton. No.
You didn't care for that one either.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You're nothing if not consistent. All right. Anything else for All Quiet on the Western Front? Let's letterboxed it. 5 stars is not what I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it a 4.5.
I, too,
Wow.
I'm going to give it a 4.5.
Okay. Okay. Well, I also will give it a 2.5.
2.5?
Yeah. I'm pretty neutral about it.
You're neutral on war.
No,
Whereas
no. This
Kyle
movie
and
is
us,
not war.
Kyle and I are warmongers, evidently.
Yeah, you're war dogs.
No, we're anti-war. We have opinions. Zach's like, anti-war? Sure. Whatever. Seen it.
Would you say between Kyle and his jujitsu classes and me and my, I don't know, is Zach the most pacifist of all of us?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Well, I mean,
not
maybe
because
just Zach got this message a long time ago, and you and I are still wrestling with it.
I don't think the fact that I do jujitsu makes me any more or less pacifist.
I'm just saying, like, you do a combat-based sport.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I'm not saying you're a bad guy. You're looking to beat people up. I'm just saying Zach literally punches nobody ever. And you, in theory, even if you're just practicing, do, right?
There's no punches in jujitsu, no.
There's no punches in jujitsu?
No.
It's grappling.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. How about a chokehold then?
Oh yeah. All the
Zach,
time.
when's the last time you held somebody?
Right. I can't think of the last time I choked someone into submission, Kyle.
Today. But they were volunteers.
Famously, Gandhi was a Brazilian
Volunteer.
Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Yeah.
I don't know. Gandhi might have had some martial arts training. I wouldn't be. Yeah.
Dr. King, I believe, choke. I mean, like. And James, why did you say you're not a pacifist? Because you're a WWE fan?
No. I don't know if I'm definitely, I personally would never physically hurt somebody. I don't think. I can't think of a scenario that would cause me to physically hurt somebody, nor have I ever physically hurt somebody intentionally in a fight or something like that. I've never been in a fight. Been in situations where I had to get myself out of a potential fight, but never actually fought somebody. But I don't necessarily believe that war is completely avoidable in some situations. Whereas I know true pacifists don't believe that.
I mean,
So.
avoidable is an interesting word, right? You kind of can't control the actions of another person.
That's what I mean. I think that's where I divert from some levels of pacifism. Believe that no matter what, you should avoid. I'm not sure that's true, but that's a whole nother podcast, I think. For right now, there's a 2.5 and 2 4.5s for All Quiet on the Western Front. There's gonna be a lot of war talk on this episode for sure, because now we are gonna run down our top 10 war movies.
Let's rank some movies. God damn it.
Starting with.
I like that one.
Did you? I like that one too. Kyle hates it.
I think it's interesting that in 550 episodes of this podcast, you've never ranked war movies. Like, think of all the crazy lists. like
I know.
Just to give some background, one of the ideas for the list that James gave us was top 10 readaptations of the same source material that are not sequels or prequels or not related to the original movie adaptation or something like that. Like, it was the most convoluted list. And then for someone's like, what about war movies? Have we done that?
Yeah. And then Kyle was like, war movies that we don't think will be on the other people's list.
Right,
war
yeah.
movies. And I was like, let's just do war
Let's
movies.
just do war movies. 500 episodes in, I guess we might as well talk about war movies.
Yeah. I mean, it's by design. It's because whenever we do a list that's like a top line genre, it kind of compromises the surprise of all other lists that might be related, right? Like,
yeah.
Now, if we do top 10 war movies of material that's only been adapted once, then we know that, like, actually none of the one. Well, maybe All Quiet on the Western Front, which is going to be on my top 10 list. Spoiler alert, is like the only one that is.
So I'm not sure it spoils as much as you are afraid it will.
Right. But yeah, but I'm guessing. But then you'd know my number one to that list as it stands right now.
Well, let's say this. What if we did top 10 war films at like episode 200? How many people are going to be spoiled and remember when listening to this?
That's what I was going to add is I also decided who cares. I think at like what Kyle said, I think at 550, enough has been said. I think we can occasionally knock out some top line genres and it'll be just fine.
Should we start regurgitating
Let's rank some
lists?
movies.
Being like, all right, it's been 6 years. Let's just redo this list.
Let's do it.
Let's rank some movies. 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 Let's rank some movies.
All right, let's rank some movies. I did take a caveat into this a little bit, just a little bit. So when I looked up war movies on Letterboxd, it gave me a lot of movies that had war in it, but I didn't feel like were war movies. So I got rid of all those. They had war in them. They just weren't war movies to me. I also took into account that I didn't include anything that wasn't like a real war. So like Edge of Tomorrow showed up in my list.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's a war in that, it's not a war movie to me. It's a sci-fi movie. So I knocked out that type of stuff too. That's my only structure for this list, though. My number 10 is a Terrence Malick movie from 1998 called Thin Red Line, which is a movie I love. It is maybe this one might give you better back. Zach, you've seen Thin Red Line, right?
I have.
Okay, so in this movie, you get
I've seen it too.
You get fine. Zach's criticism of All Quiet on the Western Front is you didn't get any background on the soldiers.
Okay.
Whereas in this one, there's definitely like flashbacks to them at home. You get to hear their thoughts while they're going through battles or getting ready to go to battle or anything like that. You get a
I
little bit of
found
their
myself
motivation.
caring about them.
Yeah. You get a little bit to hang on that's beyond just I'm here to do a job type of, machismo type stuff. And I like that about it. I also like the idea of Terrence Malick, who's a director that likes to put pretty visuals on screen, doing a war movie, which is crazy because it like cuts between things that are beautiful and also like seconds later horrific. Like the setting itself turns horrific. And I think it does a good job of showing you're definitely behind the Americans as they try to accomplish the things they're trying to accomplish, but at the same time, farther into the film, you're shown certain scenes where you're like, oh, the enemy is basically them. Because some of the things you saw in the beginning that were happening to Americans are now happening to their enemies. And that like the enemies, when they're shown in quieter moments, it's very obvious that they're just people on the other side, not demons or, whatever might go through your mind. Not literal demons, just they're not necessarily bad people. They're just other soldiers. So I also love that the movie is just, you watch it and it's just like a who's who of the time. It's
That cast.
crazy how many people are in Thin Red Line. Like if you haven't watched a 90s movie in a while, just watch this one and you'll be reminded of all of them because Sean Penn's going to show up in front of you, Adrian Brody, Jim Caviezel, George Clooney, John Cusack, Woody Harrelson, Nick Nolte, John C. Reilly, John Travolta, like you name them, they probably have a line or two at minimum in this movie. And the moment you think you're done male actor citing, they're probably going to throw one more in front of you right at the end. And I enjoy that about it as well. My number 10.
And like George Clooney is first or second build in that movie,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in one scene for a couple minutes.
Most of the people
Yeah.
that I named are in one scene.
But
there's a couple of them that are definitely throughout the movie, but
Yeah.
there's a good half of the ones I just mentioned are barely in it.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, my number 10. Before I get to my list, I'll give some structure for it too. These were all my movies are movies that take place during actual wars in human history. It didn't even cross my mind to include sci-fi wars, but
Mhm.
that's a good point to point out. And I would say most of these show war in some way, shape, or form, but not all of them. Some of them are about war or about things happening to people during war. So they're not. It's not all just. These aren't all just battle movies.
Mhm.
All right. My number 10 is a 1956 movie called A Man Escaped, directed by Robert Bresson. This is a very simple movie, and I'm just going to read to you the letterboxed plot synopsis for this movie and kind of give you an idea of what it's about. A captured French resistance fighter during World War II engineers a daunting escape from prison. And that's what this movie is. And
Nice.
even though it's simple, though, it does such a it's almost like watching a procedural where you're watching this French prisoner who's in this makeshift German prison slowly piecing together a plan to escape because he knows he can't stay here. And like every scene is him getting a new piece of material or realizing a new part of the plan, and you're slowly watching it all come together. And even though I use the word slowly a couple of times, this movie doesn't feel slow whatsoever. You're just kind of just in this cell with this man as everything sort of happens to him. And it's a very effective and a very fascinating prison escape movie.
I love A Man Escaped. That is such a great movie. That movie and movies like it are not going to be in my list because I did not include like prisoner of war movies because that one, yes, a war is going on and he is a prisoner of war, but it's really a prison escape movie.
Correct,
in
yeah.
my mind. We're not really touching on like the aspects of war necessarily. So kind of similar to your guys, I didn't include artificial wars. So like Starship Troopers is not on my list, even though that would be a war
movie.
film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also pretty much try to stick to modern wars. So like I don't have 300 on here, even though that's a movie that I like because that war was a long, long time ago.
Mhm.
And that's just an artificial barrier that I set. And for the most part, I try to make movies that dealt with actual warfare, and maybe some of the fallout of that, not things like Casablanca where a war is going on, but we're mostly detached from it.
Yeah.
Okay. So my number 10 is Atonement. Atonement is such a great film, but the whole second half is him at war. And what I really, really liked about this movie is that they have this oneer that shows off like the whole beach scene. And you just see so much visually happening, and it kind of tells a story, right? As it adds new element, and then finally zooms out and you see the whole beach, and it's just very impressively done. And the movie itself is all really, really good. So I really enjoyed Atonement quite a bit. It's my number 10.
Nice. My number 9 is from 1957. It's Paths of Glory, the Stanley Kubrick movie. I enjoyed this one. I think I watched it 3 or 4 years ago when we did the Kubrick episode. I don't think I had seen it until around that time. So it was one I came to later. And I enjoy it. I think it's really well made, despite the time it was made. I think it holds up, and it's pretty close to the first movie where I realized like why people liked Kirk Douglas, like why he was a star. I kind of understood it after watching this movie. I'm sure he has others where it's perfectly obvious why he's a star in those two, but this is the first one I saw where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. He was like the Tom Cruise of the time, where it was just like he has a thing on screen. And I like the scene in where is it where they're like having a debate and there's like a table with like lots of food on it. And,
Oh, they're in like the commander's quarters.
right, they're in the commander's quarters. I like that scene quite a bit, but the war scenes themselves are also really well done, especially for a movie from the 50s.
Good pick.
Yeah. I love Paths of Glory. It's not going to be on my list just because the actual war scenes of the movie I didn't find nearly as impressive as all the courtroom drama, intrigue, and stuff. That was the stuff that I really leaned into that movie, so I just left it off the list.
Totally fair. Yeah. I just made a last minute change to my list. Zach, after you said that you only included modern war movies, I looked at my top 10 and I had one war movie that was not from the 20th century. So I'm like, this feels out of place. So I'm just going to let everyone know I cut Braveheart from my list.
Yeah, Braveheart's not on my list for that reason.
Braveheart's on my list and it's staying.
Perfect. You should leave it on there.
Yeah.
But so I cut,
it would be number 1 if it was on my list.
Yeah. I cut Braveheart, not in the same spot, but I slotted into my list Dunkirk from 2017, directed by Christopher Nolan. This movie is a World War II movie that actually follows the British soldiers in Dunkirk, which is, we don't get, especially from, not American filmmakers, I guess Hollywood productions, we don't get a lot of World War II movies focusing on British soldiers. Usually it's the American soldiers. So it's, interesting that you're getting a little bit different perspective of a World War II movie. And you also have Christopher Nolan, who's kind of telling you 3 stories at once. And they're all eventually going to meet at the same point, where we're following a pilot played by Tom Hardy, a naval officer, soldier, and a Navy man played by, I don't know who, not Harry Styles, but he's one of the people in the movie. And then Mark Ruffalo, what's his name?
Rylance.
Mark Rylance, thank you. Mark Rylance as a civilian, boat captain in his part in the war too. And I thought Nolan did a awesome job of tying those 3 stories together and making it watchable as we're jumping between these 3 different experiences all of the same moment.
Yeah.
Nice.
Great pick.
Zach, what's
Oh,
your
is
number
it?
9?
I'll go. Thank you for asking. It's Apocalypse Now.
Good pick.
Apocalypse Now is a pretty wild movie. It gets a little fantastical, I would say, but it certainly shows the horrors of war in a very artsy kind of visceral, guttural way. It's got iconic lines, iconic imagery, iconic acting performances. It's really there's a lot to recommend it for sure. In fact, James's last episode last week, they quoted a line from a movie that was a reference to Apocalypse Now. I love the smell of commerce in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pervaded culture in many ways.
Was that from UHF?
I think of Mallrats, maybe,
Right. Mallrats. Right.
which I haven't seen.
That makes sense. My number 8 is from 2014. It's Fury, the tank movie directed by David Ayer. Easily David Ayer's, maybe not easily, but David Ayer. I will say David Ayer's best movie, followed right behind with End of Watch. And then there's a giant gap between that and everything else he did, basically, or has done. Yeah, so if you haven't seen Fury, it stars Brad Pitt and Shia LaBeouf and John Barenthal, amongst others, and they are a tank platoon that are fighting in World War II, and their kind of tank commander is Brad Pitt, and he is very war hardened at this point in the war. And there's a new recruit who doesn't know what he's doing, basically, and so you're kind of following through the story through his eyes as kind of the new guy to the platoon, and gets very quickly initiated into the horrors of war, and by the end of the movie kind of realizes that it's less about killing and more about protecting your crew on some level. And then at the very end, there's kind of a Custer's last stand moment in the last half an hour of the movie that I think is a technical and storytelling feat. I think it works very well in those last moments, not only because you've spent a lot of time with these guys and you don't necessarily like them because they're so kind of war hardened, but you do respect the bond and the idea that they're trying to live up to. They're still trying, even though they're doing what they're doing it to, they assume that if they make this stand, these soldiers that they're standing against won't be able to attack other people on their side. So even though they know they're not going to come out on the other side of this, they're still going to do it when they could run away, type of thing. And I don't know if that's valiant or dumb. I think that's for you to decide if you're watching the movie, but I just think it's a really well made movie. And unfortunately, it's one of the reasons I have to always watch David Ayer movies. He made this one and End of Watch. So I know there's potential there. But man, the tax collector almost killed it for me. And there's a couple other ones where I'm like, all right, can I be done with David Ayer now? Or do I have to keep watching these to see if he comes up with another one?
Yeah.
Is the Tax Collector the movie where Shia LaBeouf got a actual full body tattoo for the movie?
I think he got a full chest tattoo.
Full chest, okay.
I mean, he got a huge tattoo, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it was full body.
Okay. Sorry. I meant to say full torso.
Yeah, but it was still like, from the waist up, basically.
I feel about Fury what Zach feels about this version of All Quiet on the Western Front, where I was impressed
is
by the
what?
filmmaking,
Mhm.
and I've also seen War is Hell movies. It didn't give me anything new besides tanks to the War is Hell
Mhm.
oeuvre.
Fair enough.
Yeah. My number 8 is the previously mentioned Paths of Glory from 1957, Stanley Kubrick movie, starring Kirk Douglas. Uh, First half of this movie is a World War I battle movie, as you were mentioning, Zach. I think in this case, everyone's French. We're following like Kirk Douglas, and all the soldiers are on the French side of things. And there is an attack, a push by the French side that goes poorly. A lot of men retreat and don't want to participate. So the French generals decide to put 3 men randomly drawn on trial as sort of like a message to the entire company of, if you don't follow orders, this could happen to you. And then Kirk Douglas volunteers to defend those men in what ends up being a bit of a kangaroo court. So yeah, it's both a World War I movie battle wise, and it's also a courtroom drama. I think both are pretty effective. Especially there's some great some great tracking shots shot in the trenches of the battle, where it looks like it's going to be made with a Steadicam, but it's 1957. Steadicam has not been invented for another 25 years. And it's one of those questions like, how did Kubrick get this shot of the camera going down these trenches without any rails or anything else going, on? And it's pretty cool. It's also, I think, Kubrick's first complete vision movie where you see all of his directing styles starting to come together. You watch those first couple ones and you see hints and aspects of it, and then Paths of Glory is the first one where it really all comes together, both in the filmmaking and then the tone of the movie. This will not be the only Kubrick movie on my list, FYI.
Oh, teaser.
Teaser indeed. My number
What's
8.
the other one gonna be?
Other ones?
What?
Oh, what? Kyle put multiple Kubrick movies on the list. Shocking.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, my number 8 is a Stanley Kubrick movie called Doctor Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. And this is a satire film which shows kind of like the machinations of the war room, and also like the men that are performing the actions that they're calling for, kind of a thing. This movie's really great. It's really clever and funny and disturbing, and some iconic shots like riding a missile like a horse as it's launching. Some really great stuff in this movie. I like it a ton. My number 8.
My number 7 is All Quiet on the Western Front from 2022, which we just talked about. I don't need to say much more about it, but I do have a question. What do you guys think the motivation is for Netflix to make and release this movie? Do you think they're looking
Oscars.
for an Oscar? This was just their Oscar bid for this year, or one of them anyway.
Yeah, I'm seeing this movie online marketed as Germany's Oscar submission.
Oh, interesting. So well, I mean, nowadays you don't have to submit for a foreign language Oscar, right? You could just get a normal Oscar.
Yeah, so
Post Parasite world.
I'm not sure if Germany is going for the foreign language. I should say this movie. I don't know if this movie is going for a foreign language or just for a general Oscar, but I think Oscar is the Academy Award is their motivation for doing this movie.
Interesting. Zach, do you generally agree with that, or do you have a different theory?
I do agree with that.
Fair enough. My number 7.
Although I would imagine they have lots of data that says there's an emerging German Netflix market and they enjoy blah, 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 blah. Like,
And
I think
Sure.
they have so
They don't
much
have-
data in what people watch. They're like, okay, we need a war movie from the German side about men who, like they could
Right.
make the most dialed in movie ever if they need to.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of war movies from the German side.
Well, that we know of. There's a ton in Germany. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, they're
Like, you know
like
how China has all of these blockbusters that are like them in World War II? Like, I think the biggest movie ever in China came out last year, and it's like the Chinese version of World War II.
Really?
Yeah,
Wanna
and
see
it's like, yeah, I want to see it too. It looks like wild CGI, like very impressive CGI. This epic movie, and where the Americans like are like buffoons, basically, like just these caricatures of America.
does
that.
it
Sure.
Yeah,
does it have the Chinese soldiers raising the flag on Iwo Jima?
no, I
Okay.
mean it's not that revisionist.
okay.
It's
All right.
just
They just ignore that moment.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like Argo. Like let's just ignore the Canadians and talk about how the Americans saved the day.
Sure.
Got it. All right. I would be curious to see a World War II movie from the Chinese perspective, because I don't think when we talk about World War II, China ever comes up in conversation.
hmm
I think it might be called the 800.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll look more into this, but it made 500 million at the box office in China, which is not bad.
Which means like half the population saw it for $1. I'm not impressed. Only 500 million in China. What's that per capita dollar amount?
I have no idea. Probably not that high.
Yeah, I'm not impressed by that number. All right, speaking of World War II, we get to my number 7 movie, which is Grave of the Fireflies from 1988. This is an animated movie. I believe this is released by Studio Ghibli, but is not a Miyazaki film. But it's definitely similar animation style, and at the same time that Miyazaki was making a lot of his movies. This follows 2 children who are orphaned during World War II, 2 Japanese children, I should say. They are orphaned during World War II during a bombing raid, and then make shelter in an old train tunnel to try and wait out the war and survive until they can be reunited with family. And this is if this is sort of a war is hell for the civilians movie, where you're not getting a ton of war scenes. You're more just seeing like how it's affecting the population and how these people are dragged into a war, right, where their commanders and leaders are making these decisions, and then the consequences are falling upon the general population, and they're the ones who are suffering. This is a very effective movie. It's a hard movie, so I definitely want to think if people are going to see this, if they haven't seen it, like go in knowing that you're going to be watching children, even though they're animated, trying to survive during wartime. But I think it's a pretty great anti-war movie.
Yeah, that's why it's my number 7 as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nothing to
Yeah,
add.
everything you said. Yeah, it's a heartbreaking film. It's amazing that a cartoon can be that affecting.
I remember watching it. I think we watched it for the podcast, right, Zach, at some point?
Possibly.
Yeah. Didn't stick with me. I
Okay.
don't know what that says about me, but it didn't stick with me. But I've heard a lot of people really love this movie and that it really moved them and that it did stick with them, but it didn't do that to me for some reason. I don't know. My number 6 is a movie that definitely stuck with me from 1986, Platoon, which is a Oliver Stone movie about the Vietnam War. And yeah, it's great. Won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Sound, and Best Editing. A full sweep of all the major categories. Yeah, this is this is a great one. It's got Willem Dafoe and Charlie Sheen in it, amongst others. And it's just got some classic Hollywood war movie imagery in it. Like the guy just kind of like with his arms up to the sky with just what do they call it? Napalm line
Yeah.
of trees behind him. Yeah, just a classic 80s war movie. Love it. And also it has things to say. Oliver Stone. Not too scared to criticize the government, I would say. He takes the opportunity in this movie. And yeah, I enjoy it.
Well, Oliver Stone served in Vietnam, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually fought in Vietnam. But I don't know.
Okay.
Is
I
the
f-
key to
yeah.
that sentence. I
Hmm.
don't know.
To be determined.
I'll find out. You tell us your number 6.
All right, my number 6 is another Stanley Kubrick movie from 1987. This is Full Metal Jacket. This is Kubrick's take on the Vietnam War. It's definitely doesn't have as much commentary as like Paths of Glory does about. It's not as it's more direct about the horrors of war. Paths of Glory is more about like the silliness of this all and the pointlessness of this exercise, and Full Metal Jacket more focuses on the just the atrocity of war and
Yeah.
how that can
The dehumanization.
right, exactly. Obviously this has a incredibly famous opening sequence with the training with the staff sergeant, with the sergeant at arms, master drill sergeant. There's the word I was looking for, Arlie Ermy. And then also has for me, a very memorable third act where they are raiding a city and trying to take out a sniper, which was all shot in outside of London, which I thought was pretty interesting. They brought palm trees in and everything. For me, this movie, though, I always forget the middle. Like, for whatever reason, the middle just is not as memorable. Maybe because the first and third acts are so memorable, so seared in my brain, and have such iconic moments. And the middle is just kind of like, yeah, it's more of war sucks and I'm bored, but it doesn't kind of have that that punch that the beginning and end do.
Nice.
Yeah. Oliver Stone. Definitely served in Vietnam and
Okay.
is a 2-time Purple Heart winner.
Good for him.
Cool. My number 6, previously mentioned, Thin Red Line.
Nice.
I think I'm a big fan of that director, and I think this movie is beautiful and moving, and I do like all of the characters, and I do think it's a crazy who's who of people from back then. It's kind of fun, and yeah, it's really beautiful. I remember this came out at the same time as Saving Private Ryan,
Yeah.
and they were like, it was kind of, at the time I was like, well, you see one or the other, you know. It wasn't like you're gonna see both. It was like, you know, do you see Dante's Peak or Volcano?
Oh, I saw both of those too.
All right, Dante's
Yeah.
Peak for sure.
Yeah, we saw Dante's Peak on a field trip.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
It's a great way to
Wait,
spend a
the
day.
field trip was
Rocky
just to
Rococo's.
go see Dante's Peak?
yeah, at Rocky Rococo's.
It was like the day before winter break, or it was, you know, one of those like we don't want to teach. So let's just bring.
So
the
this
kids to go see
wasn't like a
Dante's Peak.
science field trip or something?
No. It was. Yeah, there's
That'd be worse.
They paid bus drivers to drive you to a movie theater, and there was literally no educational value here.
Yeah, it was like a party.
yeah. This was the roaring 90s, you know. This is the
Crazy.
.com boom. There's money flung everywhere.
.com boom.
Yeah, no, it was at, Zach mentioned, it was at Rocky Rococo's, which at the time had a movie theater in the restaurant. So
Yeah.
like you could sit at tables, eat pizza, and then watch a movie on the screen. I definitely saw multiple movies. I think we saw Contact, Zach, at Rocky Rococo.
That would have been awesome.
Was
I
that a
wonder,
field
like,
trip
the
too?
movie.
No, I think he and I went. Like, no, you could just go like, you know, on a Wednesday night, go see what they were playing. I think we saw Contact one of the times at Rocky Rococo.
Nice.
It was cool. It was a cool field trip.
James, you never took a class trip somewhere to like watch a movie?
In high school, I went to a debate tournament in Chicago where we went to a movie theater and saw Braveheart. But other than that, I can't think of another time I was on a school function
Took
and
you
I
to-
saw a movie like off campus. Like certainly I had teachers who were like, I don't want to teach today, and played movies for us, but
Yeah.
actually going somewhere to see a movie, no.
I can't believe they took
Never
it
Did you
to
happened.
ever like
Braveheart.
go to a water park or anything, like a theme park? every year
never
we
went
to
somewhere
Noah's
that
Ark.
didn't have like an educational value on top
Oh.
of whatever we were doing.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
every year we'd go to a water park.
Yep.
This was a public school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild. What state was this? This was in Florida.
No, this is Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
We got Wisconsin
Right.
Dells, just like 45 minutes north of Madison.
I mean, they must do it different in Wisconsin.
Water park
'cause
capital of the world.
in California
It's true.
and Florida, public and private schools. I never took field trips for frivolous reasons.
Man, it's too bad. Maybe you would have liked school better.
Yeah.
I'm not against it.
Where's the
I'm just saying
joy?
it didn't happen to me. I wish.
Yeah.
As a teacher,
So-
we did those field trips to the water parks, and it was great because you would like ride on the bus, and you get there, and you told the kids, "All right, be on this bus at 3:00," and then you just were gone.
It sounds like lawsuits just waiting to happen, taking kids to water parks.
They signed permission slips.
Yeah, still. I don't know.
I mean, we didn't go to Action Park.
I'm sure there
Sure.
were school groups that went to Action Park back in the 70s.
Oh,
though.
absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. All right. So, yeah, my number 6, then Redline.
Nice. My number 5 is from 1989. It's Glory, which is based on the Civil War. Stars Matthew Broderick, and it's also great. It's the only
Morgan
movie
Freeman?
on my list. What?
Morgan Freeman, is he in it?
Oh yeah, Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington,
Washington.
Carrie Elwes from Princess Bride. Yeah, there's a lot of people in this movie too that maybe you wouldn't expect to be in a war movie. Like, I'm not sure you expect Matthew Broderick or Morgan Freeman to be in war movies.
Morgan Freeman, I expect, but Matthew Broderick does feel a little out of place in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, as far as like Civil War movies go, this is my favorite by far. I think Glory does a good job of kind of putting you in the moment and giving you interesting motivations for each character, kind of highlighting people at various levels, giving you a little bit of like a history lesson that maybe you don't get from a textbook, like as far as like having an African American regime in the movie.
Regiment?
Regiment. Yeah, regiment. And yeah,
What
and
do you
also
mean by
showing you
regime?
and also showing you kind of the horrors of war as presented by the American Civil War.
This is another movie we saw in school.
But we saw this in
Really?
school, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Pretty bloody movie.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
there was permission slips with this one too, of like, hey, we're watching this. Have your parents sign off on it.
So did some people like not get the permission slip and they had to not watch the movie?
I bet.
Probably. I don't remember anyone specific.
Your parents just signed anything you put in front of them?
I think my parents recognized the educational value of it. Yeah.
And also the educational value of going to a water park?
No, that's the end of school year trip. It's like
Yeah.
it's the last day of school. There's no education happening anyway.
Yeah, it's like tied to attendance. You get to go if you attended.
Yeah, you showed up. So
Oh,
here's your
really?
reward.
What if you like had too many absences? They wouldn't let you go?
I think if you had
Nope.
too many, maybe unexcused, or I don't remember all of like the specific
Study hall.
ins and outs of. Yeah, you stay behind. See, that was the crappy teacher job. Was you to stay behind with the kids who didn't get to go, because then you're just babysitting for a day, and it's literally like, watch a movie. Okay, now go to the gym and play dodgeball for 45 minutes. Okay, now come back and watch a movie. Okay, now go back and go. It's just bouncing the back and forth. Like, please stay alive until 2:45, and then get out of this building.
Sure. This was Denzel Washington's first Academy Award win. Best
Yeah.
actor in a supporting role.
He said it was the tear that he got to roll down his cheek that won him the
Mhm.
Oscar.
Could be.
No tricks there. He just forced it out.
It also won Best Cinematography and Best Sound. So pretty much all the major categories.
Hey, war movies often win those technical awards.
Sure.
All right. My number 5 feels out of place on this list. and not because it's not a war movie, it is, and not because it doesn't take place during the 20th century, but it does. But most of these movies on my list are, in some way, shape, or form, are anti-war or about the horrors of war. And this movie kind of celebrates war, and that's Inglourious Bastards, my number 5. I think this is a really good movie. It's Quentin Tarantino, Brad Pitt, a bunch of other people are in it. Brad Pitt has a team of American soldiers who are Nazi hunters. There's definitely some revisionist history going on. Christoph Waltz has a great line or great character. I mean, there's so many great things about this movie. But for whatever reason, it just feels kind of weird on this list amongst all these other anti-war, war is hell movies. But I'm keeping it on here. My number 5, Inglourious Bastards.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's like a fantasy element to it. It's
For-
based on
Yeah.
historical fact, like in ways, but also does its own thing.
Right. It's like
So-
historical fiction.
right. Which I'm sure some of these do more than we know. It's
Well-
just Inglourious Bastards does not hide it at all.
Yeah. No, like my number 4 didn't happen either when I get to it, but it feels a little bit more rooted in reality versus
right.
Inglourious
Yeah.
Bastards. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, my
bingo.
that's from that movie. My number 5 is a Soviet anti-war film from 1985 called Come and See.
Yep.
And this movie is about a young Belarusian boy who, against his mother's wishes, signs up to fight against the Nazis in occupied Belarus as part of the Soviet Union. And the things he witnesses are haunting. And this movie is haunting. This movie is very disturbing. Absolutely does an effective job of presenting the horrors of war through the eyes of a young boy. And it's really, really well done. It's one of the few Soviet films I've seen, but I think it's really worth watching. So it's called Come and See.
That's one I have not seen that I do want to, but feel like I just know it's not going to be a good time. So I have interest, I have motivation, but I don't. I don't know what mood I need to be in, but someday I'll watch it when I'm just like, okay, I can handle this in the moment, whatever this
Okay.
has in store for me.
All right.
But I don't know when
Good
that'll
luck.
happen.
Good
All right.
luck.
Thanks.
They did a Criterion release of it.
I'm gonna need it evidently. That would get me closer to watching it, owning it.
Get yourself a Criterion 4K of Come and See, so you can just
Is there a
experience the
4K
magic
coming?
anytime. It's probably Blu-ray. No,
Okay, I was gonna say.
but you can
If
just
it was
you can,
4K, I'm definitely watching it. But
can watch it anytime you want, though.
I need to see that child suffering in 4K.
Mm-hmm.
Zach's shaking his head. All right, my number 4 is from 2019. It's 1917, directed by Sam Mendes, starring actually a lot of people you might not. Well, there's a couple of appearances like by Colin Firth and Benedict Cumberbatch, but for the most part, I didn't know most of these people in this movie. At least the main guy that you follow, I didn't really know who he was. Doesn't matter. This movie's awesome, and it's a war movie. It kind of plays like an action movie. You know, I'm kind of a wonder boy in that I love oneers, even the ones with, you know, seams here and there. And because I like those, I liked this application of it as well. I thought it was really well done. And even though there were some parts that were kind of nonsensical, like some of the time passage doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And there's a moment when he like gets in the back of a truck and I guess he's traveled like really far, but in reality, it was like 3 minutes of the movie. So there's some silliness in that kind of stuff. But if you can get over that, I think there's a really fun war-based action movie here that is definitely worth watching just for the execution itself. My number 4.
Can't get over it.
You'll never be a Wonder Boy.
That's fine by me. I do not want to be a part of that club. Please never call me a Wonder Boy.
I'm a Wonder Boy.
I'm gonna get you guys shirts that say I'm a Wonder Boy, and you can just wear them proudly.
Just
Hey, I
spell it
will.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then mine can say like I like cuts.
I'll happily walk around with a Wonder Boy shirt on over one that says I like cuts.
Okay. All right. My number 4 would be my number 1 if I were doing this just by like favorite movies, but I'm more focused on like the portrayal of war in this movie, and I think some of these other movies on my list have a better portrayal of war. So my number 4 is Apocalypse Now from 1979, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. This is a Vietnam War-based movie about Martin Sheen traveling upriver into Cambodia to assassinate Colonel Kurtz, who's gone rogue, played by Marlon Brando. And along the way, he experiences the horrors of war. I should say he's already experienced the horrors of war. He's pretty grizzled at that point, but the rest of the crew on this ship, a lot of young rookies, they experience the horrors of war, and you as the audience then experience said horrors. This is definitely not a movie about Vietnam, but more about like the human condition and mankind through the lens of Vietnam. It's based on a book called Heart of Darkness. I love this movie. I just saw it at the right age and have watched it many times. I can endlessly quote this movie. And I think it is some amazing filmmaking from Francis Ford Coppola.
Wait, I don't understand how this is your number 4.
Just because these are all
This is your number 2 favorite film of all time.
Yeah, but like I'm just talking about like straight war movies, and there are when I focus on the war aspect, there are movies I like better. I think are better war movies than
He's
Vietnam.
evaluating the war part, not
Exactly.
the general balance and enjoyment of the movie.
So there's 3 movies that you evaluated the war part as making as better to your liking than Apocalypse Now, your number 2 film.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great.
I would say Apocalypse Now is not my favorite movie because it's a war movie.
Right. But it is like
okay.
There's war in it.
What percentage of Apocalypse Now do you think is a war film?
So like I said, I think the movie uses war to tell its story.
Yeah.
Right. Just because it's a modern adaptation of a story from the 19th century. So they modernized it and they said, okay, how can we reset this movie? Okay, let's reset it in Vietnam. Let's have it on a river and follow all that. But it's not really about Vietnam War.
I mean, it's very Vietnam War-ish.
It's Vietnam War-ish, but it's written. It's made by people who didn't fight in Vietnam. It's written like no one who made this movie was actually in Vietnam. No one who tied to this movie had any experience with Vietnam. It was just sort of like their perception of maybe what Vietnam was like. So I would say it's not an authentic Vietnam War movie.
Yeah. I don't think it's authentic to real life in any way, really. But okay, I was just curious because it's your number 2 favorite film of all time.
It is, yeah. But
and it's definitely a war film.
It's definitely a war movie. It's my number 2. But when I come to
number 4,
like I said, when I look at actual the war message, the war part of the movie, there are 3 I think I like more.
All right.
This is why we can't do top line things, because Zach's gonna hold you to your number 2 movie. Can't have 3 other movies about it. Unless they're war movies.
No, it can. It's just it's curious. I'm curious about it.
When we used to do these lists, how I first would do these is I go to like my top 500 and I would just like go down it. Like, all right, there's my number 1, there's my number 2, number 3. I'm like, oh, that's kind of boring. Like I do always go through that list anyway. Like, how can I just make it a little bit more interesting and not talk about the same 500 movies over and over again, or at least in a different order.
I got you. So your number 1 is not going to be in your top 10.
No, my number 1's in my top 10.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. My number 4 has been mentioned. It's Glory. Glory's
Nice.
great. Glory's so good.
It
Glory's
is.
good. I could rewatch Glory at any time. I liked Glory a lot. And
Yeah.
I don't think Matthew Broderick's out of place. I think he's good for that role.
Oh, I think
'Cause
he's
he's-
great. But at the time, it was like, why is Matthew Broderick in this?
Yeah.
Ferris
Yeah.
Bueller is in charge of a
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
regime.
But he's like yeah, but he seems out of place, like his character's out of place, for what he's trying to do. Like, and it's great. It's great.
Maybe it's
great.
it might be the mustache.
That's
Oh,
the
you don't
whole
like the
thing.
mustache.
It's just not how you see him.
Yeah,
until
well,
you
I
see him
mean,
in that movie.
Can you picture Matthew Broderick with facial hair at all? Like young,
Yeah.
obviously now you can, but like picture young Matthew Broderick with facial hair. Just doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm picturing it.
Got his eyes
And how's it make you
closed, just
feel?
trying to picture it.
Feel good about it.
Okay. All right. Well, good.
I feel really good about it.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
My number 4.
My number 3 is Braveheart from 1995. I think, since Kyle removed it from his list, I've been thinking about it. And it's maybe not as much of a war movie as it is just like one guy who happens to be leading a war.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of war scenes in it with like a bunch of dudes battling and stuff like that. So I think there's definitely war element, maybe not as strong in the war, the politics of war, that type of stuff department. It's more, will this guy lead well type of department. And he does, and the movie's good. And I like it. Therefore, it's my number 3.
Nice.
I have no problem with that pick. My number 3 is the previously mentioned and my third Kubrick movie on this list, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb from 1964. As mentioned, yeah, this is a satire on the nuclear arms race during the Cold War. Endlessly quotable, endlessly hilarious, and one of the greatest satires ever made. That's all we need to say.
And more warlike than Apocalypse Now.
I knew this was coming. I just knew this was coming.
No, just more real to like war than Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's heightened, but I think it's based more in reality of this actual arms race that was happening.
Oh, really?
I imagine that there were generals like I can't remember. They have great names. I can't remember any of them right now. That there were warmongering generals like the characters in this movie. Right. Is it heightened and is it cranked up for hilarity? Yes. But were there not discussions about underground bunkers and how to keep the human race going and how many deaths were acceptable? For sure. This movie just does it for laughs, where those conversations were happening.
Sure. And Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now, there was never a soldier like Martin Sheen.
Who is sent to
Totally totally unrealistic. No, I'm just kidding.
I
Okay,
know.
my number.
I know everyone would be like, and this is more war than
Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
My number 3, 1917. That movie's so good, and it sticks the landing too, like a rousing ending, I would say. And then it's got these really cool set pieces. Like, remember at night when he's walking through like the shelled town, and you see all the lights, like the whatever they're
flares.
called. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, visually so stunning. It was awesome. There's a lot going on in that movie, but I liked it. I ate it up. That's a good movie.
All right. I'll give this movie a second chance. James, you send me the 4K release of it. I'll watch it again.
Sure. No problem.
No, I will give it an honest second chance, and I will put on my Wonder Boy shirt.
I mean, I will. There's no spoiler alert. There's no Dunkirk on my list, and I have not rewatched 1917. But I think 1917 is probably going to land in the same category as Dunkirk.
Is Dunkirk
where
is
it's like, it's more of like, it's going to be cool the second time, but not as cool as the experience the first time.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not sure
We'll
it's going
see.
to have a whole lot of rewatch value for me, but
We'll see.
We'll see when that 4K shows up in my mail.
We'll see. My number 2 is 1979. It's
That's a bingo.
Apocalypse Now, which is the only movie that's been on all 3 of our lists. Is that right?
Yeah.
So far.
I mean, there's not many left, really.
I mean, our number 1 is all going to be the same.
Oh,
It looks like that's possible. Anyway, Apocalypse
Star
Now.
Wars.
I literally have
Of
nothing
course.
to add to Apocalypse Now because you guys have said it all. Great war movie.
Yeah.
That
Well,
has
I mean,
very
Kyle,
little war in it.
Kyle
There's
wouldn't
better war movies.
necessarily call it a war movie. It has some war in it. It's like a mid-range war film.
No, of my
Sure.
top 10, it's mid-range. Like, it's not a mid-range
of your
war
top
movie.
10, it's mid-range.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of your top 10, it's mid-range.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely has war in it. I agree with that.
Yeah. I think if you squint, you can see some war in there.
Yeah, here and there.
Yeah.
If you look in the outside, but
Yeah.
a true war movie. And my number 2 is the previously mentioned Come and See from 1985. I got nothing to add to what Zach said. This movie will destroy you in all the best ways. I definitely was thinking about Come and See while watching 2022's All Quiet on the Western Front, because it's very similar. About you start with this young, naive, excited boy, and by the end, they're just a shell of themselves. But I would say what the kid in Come and See goes through is much worse and much more deliberate and sadistic than what is happening to Paul in All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a kid, which makes it worse, right?
I mean, I like teenager. I wouldn't say he's that much younger than Paul. It's not
He
like
looks a lot younger, though.
he at the beginning he does. By the end, he's pretty hollowed out. Yeah, I mean, it's not an 8-year-old. I would say this is a teenager of some sort.
Okay.
I wonder how old he is in that movie. I do not know. I cannot say. My number 2, Full Metal Jacket.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is wild. So many memorable scenes, a ridiculous number of memorable moments and scenes. You know, if you follow the adage that a masterpiece has 3 great scenes and no bad ones, this one definitely fits that. Yeah, I like Full Metal Jacket quite a bit. And first half is boot camp. Second half is Vietnam War, and it's all very intense.
Cool. My number 1, if it's y'all's number 1, just say it. 1998 Saving Private Ryan.
My number 1 is Saving Private Ryan.
That's my number 1 too.
Yep.
Okay.
Not a
Perfect.
shocker here.
Yeah. I mean, this movie, Spielberg movie, it's got his fingerprints all over it. It's his war movie, I would say. And certainly shows some of the horror. Like, it kind of gets all the horror of war out in front. The first 15 to 25 minutes is probably some of the most well executed horror movie action ever put to film. And it's held up for the last 24 years since this movie has been released. Like, people still, just any war action scene is going to constantly be compared to the first 25 minutes or so of this movie. It's that well done. And then on top of that, you kind of get like this very in your face, immediate action scene right at the beginning of the movie. And then you spend the rest of it very quietly experiencing a little bit of the fallout from that first battle, where now you're getting to know the guys that survived that first battle. And now you're getting to know other experiences that guys might have gone through during the war. And it's also happens to be a movie where there's like a very clear mission. and not in that the mission is to win the war. The mission is to get to this guy and pull him off the front because his brothers have died. And so there's a lot of like, this is a waste of time. Why is this person special? I know people who died too type of attitude. And so there's a little bit of wrestling with why are we doing this type of thing, which I enjoy. So there's like clear stakes, clear mission, some confusion as to whether it's worth it or not. And it just has the Spielberg touch. I don't know what to say other than that. There's like the level of storytelling here, and just you get to know people just enough that if they're taken out of the picture for one reason or another, you feel it, no matter who it is. And that's hard to do with these types of movies, which tend to have larger casts. So that's my take on Saving Private Ryan. Why is it y'all's number one?
I mean, a lot of the same reasons. That D-Day landing and how
Mhm.
Spielberg shot that, with the, I mean, just technically with the graininess, the speed of the camera, the sound. How many movies have copied that in the last 25 years now, right? Like, I mean, he changed how war movies were shot, and no one has really deviated from that in the last quarter of a century, which
Mhm.
is pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it throws you in right away, and you get this gut punch of war is hell, and then you start focusing on this group led by Tom Hanks and their mission, and you're right, you get to know these soldiers, and tragedy keeps happening to them as they're on this mission, and you kind of see them start to splinter. But I mean, along the way, he gives you these incredibly memorable moments, whether they be small moments of them like inside a church having a conversation about who they are in the real world,
Mhm.
like, or these other epic moments. Like there's a tank battle at the end, and I remember being in the theater. Like I saw this movie in the theater. I think we all did. I remember being in the theater, and the tank is approaching, and you see the ground rumbling, and then like the whole theater is rumbling from the base, and it's one of the most, I think, visceral war movies that have ever been made, where it's the closest you feel to like just being there by that visual and sound experience. I've obviously never been in war, hope to never be there, but I think he probably did a pretty good job of, at least if you close your eyes, you at least get the sound of what it's like to be in this chaos.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys said. It was a super powerful movie. I thought it was awesome.
I also think it's interesting that Steven Spielberg, and he's done this multiple times throughout his career. Like he's a blockbuster filmmaker, right? He makes crowd pleasing movies, and he uses some of the tricks from those crowd pleasing movies and occasionally injects them into these movies that have like a bigger thing to say, maybe. And like the Tom Hanks line where he's like, "Earn it" at the end
Mm-hmm.
is very much like a "I'm the king of the world" Titanic type of line, where it's like it's designed that scene, like the 7 minutes that leads up to that is just to pay off that line. You know what I mean? Like the whole movie has been this big debate of whether it's worth all of this for this one guy type of thing. And they build to the one line, and he gets a great actor to deliver that line. He gets a great actor to accept the line. And there's just nobody who does it like Steven Spielberg. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to say it other than that. Like he's a master at uh, giving you a lot of information and then funneling it emotionally into one thing that you can latch onto and then paying it off. And he does that with his movies like Jaws, and he also does it with movies like this.
Is this a top 10 movie for all three of us?
I don't think Saving Private Ryan is top 10 for me.
Okay.
It's 54
Oh,
for me.
That is lower than I expected.
Pretty low. It's Kyle's number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I got to make room for Triangle somehow. So,
You got to get Triangle in there too.
yeah.
It's 38 for me.
Okay. So I like it quite a bit more, relatively, than you guys do.
None of mine were in the top 10. The first one that made my list is number 16, Braveheart.
Okay. I think I have 2 top 10 with Apocalypse Now and Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah. Braveheart's my number 2. Past then to get to war film is 31, Full Metal Jacket.
Okay.
I don't think Full Metal Jacket made my top 100. It's definitely in the 500. Yeah, it's not in the top 100.
Okay. I would say most of these movies on my list were top 100. Not all of them, but 3/4 maybe.
It's not even my top 200, Full Metal Jacket. I don't know where it is. Cool.
You hate that movie.
I don't hate that movie, but it's not I know it's a war movie, but I don't really remember the war scenes. I remember the
Really?
scene at the end with the tank. Isn't there a tank and there's like one kid that's like shooting at them?
There's not a tank, but there's a sniper at the end.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Who's
the
like
war scene.
That is the war scene?
Well, I mean, there's a lot more going on besides just the sniper, but that's the main set piece at the end.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that scene, but I remember the movie more for the boot camp.
Oh, for sure.
And them hanging out in Saigon or wherever they are.
Yep.
When they're just like waiting for direction, basically.
Can I rattle off some honorable mentions?
Please.
A Matter of Life and Death is really good. It's about a guy that's shot down and he's supposed to die, but he like doesn't, and he falls in love. And then heaven is like trying to figure out what to do about this because he's supposed to die, but he like formed a relationship after he's supposed to die. So it's a cool kind of larger than life war film. Battleship Potemkin is a very early Russian film that's actually really gripping for being 100 years old, and it's pretty influential. Dunkirk, Greyhound. I actually really liked Greyhound, which is Tom Hanks directing a submarine movie. Cold Mountain is a movie that takes place during the Civil War, and it just kind of touches on Civil War stuff while telling a pretty episodic movie, but I liked Cold Mountain a lot. To Be or Not to Be is a great movie, but I didn't include it because it's more about like, the civilian war effort, I would say. But To Be or Not to Be is a must watch, I would say. Schindler's List I didn't include just because it's more about the Holocaust than the actual like warfare. Forrest Gump I didn't include because the war element is such a minor part of the film. Jarhead is a movie that I liked a lot, and that's more about like the waiting for war, like getting hyped up for war and then nothing happens and dealing with that. And then Hacksaw Ridge was a movie that I thought in parts were very cheesy, but in other parts were very effective. And then the final two I'll mention is Empire of the Sun, which is the Spielberg film. And that is a great war film about a location and time of war that we don't often see. And then We Were Soldiers is a movie that I don't remember super well, but I do remember liking quite a bit when I saw it.
Yeah, we saw We Were Soldiers together, and I remember it was pretty emotional at the end of that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't remember it well enough to include it on this list.
It's pretty graphic, which seeing what Mel Gibson started doing afterwards, it kind of tracks with his directing his progress as director.
Oeuvre.
But yeah, can I throw a couple?
Was this another school trip?
No,
No.
no, we were in college when we saw this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So technically a school trip.
Like summer,
You were at school.
spring break. Can't remember what.
No, but we went to different schools.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. We were
You
home.
were in. You were in school.
Yes, we
No,
were.
hey,
We were
out of school.
college students, but not at the college.
You were students.
Yeah. Can I throw a couple out there also that I considered?
Sure.
No.
Lawrence of Arabia, which is a World War I movie, but more on focusing on the Middle East. Just rewatch that; it's really good. The Deer Hunter, which is about friends who go to the Vietnam War, but then handling coming home. So I kind of left it off because there's not a lot of war in it, though the war in it is not very fun. Stalag 17, which is a World War II prisoner movie. The Pianist. This is Adrian Brody, and the director's name I can't remember at all right now. And he's playing a Jewish man trying to escape the Polish ghettos during World War II. Barry Lyndon, another Kubrick movie. It actually has some Revolutionary War scenes in it, but it's not necessarily a
Wait,
war
that's
movie.
Revolutionary War?
Or is it? No.
I thought that's
there's a
French Revolution, maybe.
Okay, maybe it's French Revolutionary War.
I
Well,
feel
no.
like he's French.
No, I thought they have red coats on though. I need to rewatch Barry Lyndon. It's been a long time. You look it up.
I'm looking it up.
Okay, right, because he's not in America, so it's not Revolutionary War. But I think they're English though. But you look it up. The Five Bloods, which is Spike Lee's Vietnam War movie. I really like that one. I'm just kind of rattling the movies off here. Yeah, I think that was kind of the Zach. You hit the main ones. Oh, one more that Zach, have you seen Army of Shadows?
It doesn't ring a bell.
It is it's a World War II movie about a French resistant fighter trapped in a Nazi prison camp.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Barry Lyndon, he is a British soldier fighting the 7 Years' War in
Okay.
Germany.
In Germany. Thank you. All right, yeah. And Revolutionary seemed wrong because they're not in America, but
Yeah.
they're British. So
Now, James, can you bring everyone up to date about the 7 Years' War?
No, I
Fair
refuse. I know a lot about it, but I will not share my knowledge.
I respect that.
hmm
I respect that.
did any of you?
Um,
Oh yeah, go ahead, James. I have one more
no,
I
no,
want to
let me-
mention, but
Hit me.
this is a World War I movie, or documentary. Did you guys ever see They Shall Never Grow Old?
Yes, they
Okay.
shall not grow old.
Sorry, They Shall Not Grow Old. Yes.
Yes,
Okay. Zach, you
It's-
see that one?
it's good.
I think I saw like the first 15 minutes, maybe.
Okay.
What?
And you were
What do you mean, what?
not interested in it?
How could you? Yeah.
I think it hadn't like switched over to like the good footage. I think it starts off with like the normal footage, and then later it switches onto the good footage.
It
Good
doesn't take
footage.
15 minutes. Yeah. So for people who haven't seen this movie, it's a documentary about World War I using actual footage shot during World War I. But Peter Jackson changed the frame rate, colorized it, and was able to add sound to it, like through lip reading and other diegetic sounds. So it feels like you're watching an actual documentary shot during World War I versus kind of choppy black and white footage we're used to seeing. And yeah, there are moments where it starts off showing like the normal footage, how we would see it in black and white with the sped up frame rate and everything, and then it transitions into the cleaned up digital version, which is pretty interesting. I don't think it takes 15 minutes though. I'm pretty sure they do it rather soon in the movie. That's kind of the whole hook of it.
Well, it took too long.
It took too long.
I didn't get to the good footage.
Zach, I like
Sure.
this movie, and I watched it on an airplane from New Zealand to Fiji after having already been on an airplane for 15 hours to New Zealand and a 6-hour layover in Auckland. So I'd been awake for what felt like a day, and I still enjoyed.
So you had the I've been in Australia and I'm going to Fiji glow.
In
saw
Australia,
this.
New Zealand.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Even better. You
I-
had the New Zealand
I had
Fiji
the
glow.
South Pacific glow going into this movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm about to go spend.
And it was a Peter Jackson movie, and you just left New Zealand. Of course, you like this.
I've been in New Zealand for 6 hours, so I wasn't quite fully immersed within the within New Zealand culture yet. Haven't been to Hobbitown yet.
Hobbiton?
Hobbiton, yes.
Hobbit Town?
Yeah, I'm looking at the poster right there, and it's definitely Hobbiton. So I apologize.
Hobbit Town.
Those of us who have been know how it's actually pronounced. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Movies you guys did not mention that I eliminated because I didn't feel as focused on like a broader war enough for me. Would be like Das Boot
Mm-hmm.
is war,
No.
but I really like that movie. The Pianist revolves around a war, but is not much about the actual war and more about one guy's survival within it. Jojo Rabbit
Mm-hmm.
is certainly a movie that takes place during a war, but didn't feel like a war movie to me, even though obviously war is an element. Same with Son of Saul. Land of Mine is really good, but it's about after the war. So technically about war, but not really about an ongoing war. There's a lot of them. I really liked Letters from Iwo Jima and Flags of Our Father as well, like the Clint Eastwood movies
Oh,
that
yeah.
show both sides of a conflict. I think that one
Right.
is like more low key than maybe some of the ones that made my list, less in your face and subtle. But I think if you're like a war movie buff or a history buff, I think those are worth checking out for some kind of perspective on one battle from both sides type of thing. And yeah, there's a lot of them that just feel less about the war and more about the person than the war.
Yep.
Like Hurt Locker is certainly a movie during a war, but it was hard to add. It was hard to put anything in here that wasn't like just World War One, World War II stuff, because those are so prominent and they made so many of them. And the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war are just so like trench warfare. It's so easily defined when you think about World War I and World War II, and even like the Civil War. Those wars are so easily defined. And you get movies like Hurt Locker where it's like a movie about improvised explosive devices and the guys who detect them and decommission them. It's just a harder war is hard. Modern war is hard.
Yeah.
Like what are real modern war movies going to be? Just like drone pilots? We're just going to film drone pilots? You know what I mean? Like what is it going to be? I don't know. Hopefully we won't have any to film, but knowing the nature of man, I doubt it.
That's why you're not a
Oh.
pacifist.
With that depressing thought, did Zach decided he no longer wanted to be a part of this.
Apparently,
episode.
Zach has left the Zoom. But the minute you said war will never go away, Zach was out.
I know. I'm
And
assuming he's
he's
coming back.
back.
Here he goes.
Yeah,
He's
I
back.
agree. And I think, bouncing off of what you said,
So, Zach, we were discussing the merits of the 7 Years' War for a moment there. Where do you land on it again?
I was giving my
forgot.
viewpoint on it.
Yeah.
changed
James
my
already
mind,
weighed in.
but-
I'm ready for your
Well,
rebuttal.
I mean, I judging for what you guys have already said about World War I know you're sympathetic to the Prussians. For me, Bismarck is not someone to be idolized. So I personally am going to go British side on that.
Yeah, you would. It sounds like a Zach
yeah.
response.
Who's Bismarck?
Otto von Bismarck was the leader of Germany pre-World War I. I believe either his demise politically led to World War I, or he left during World War I, something like that.
How do you guys feel
How-
about The Last Samurai?
I've never seen The Last Samurai.
Okay.
Didn't like it.
You didn't like it.
I didn't like that the last samurai was Tom Cruise.
Is he considered the last samurai?
I think so.
He's just a guy that teaches the samurai, right?
They can't teach amongst themselves.
So who's the last samurai, James, in your reading?
I don't know. I think it's less like, it's kind of like sheep, right? Like sheep is the plural of sheep. So it's like the last samurai is talking about like all the samurais, not necessarily Tom Cruise himself as the last samurai.
I think that would be the final samurai.
Yeah, the final would be, oh, you mean final would be like all of them, but for some reason last is a word that can't.
Wait, so we're
encompass
saying
all
that
of them?
samurai is plural of samurai?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's representing all of this. Like, I don't think it would be the last samurais.
Why not?
I don't know. It just feels wrong.
I think that the last, it means one. Like the last Jedi, right? Is not about like the end of the group of Jedis. It's about the one Jedi, right? Because otherwise,
Sure.
episode 2 would be called The Last Jedi.
Right, but what would you say to represent like the last group of Jedi? You wouldn't say the final Jedi, because that still implies one. You know what I mean?
I would call it the group of Jedis are dwindling.
Right, so you'd pluralize Jedis. But in a case of sheep, you wouldn't say the last sheeps, because the plural of sheep is sheep.
I
So
think
in this
of
case,
anything, I think of anything, if there's a close parallel, it would be Jedi and samurai. I think you would do exactly the same thing with samurai that you would do with Jedi.
I'm just saying I don't know if there's a plural to samurai, if the plural of samurai is samurai.
Okay,
Just
but
from
you're
a
saying
language
the last samurai is just the world of samurai is ending, and then he is just a guy at that time period.
I'm saying that I think they heavily imply that Tom Cruise is the last samurai. But if you watch the movie,
that's what you're saying.
He's teaching samurai like how to survive in a world where there's now, Tommy guns and stuff like that. Maybe it's not Tommy guns. What is it? The machine gun that is invented in the movie?
It's not
something
like
that.
a gangster movie where Bonnie and Clyde are.
Sure.
I've never
I'm
seen
just
it,
saying,
but I'm
like,
assuming there's no Tommy guns in it.
Modern warfare is catching up to them. And so I think the poster implies he's certainly the last samurai, but you could argue that the title is about the last group of samurai soldiers.
Then they should have called it The End of the Samurai. But he has this heroic death right at the end.
Sure.
Spoiler.
After all the other samurai have died. And it's just like, come on, Tom Cruise. You're not the last samurai.
I'm not arguing that it's, problematic.
Yeah.
And the implication is that he's the last samurai. But I think you could also argue that the title is talking about the group of them, not necessarily him.
I think
if I
the
was the
debate
producer, that's what I'd argue.
Yeah. I imagine the debate is less about the title and more about why is Tom Cruise in this movie? Or a white guy.
What do you think about Bye Bye Samurai?
That could work too. I do think, isn't Last Samurai based on like a historical thing? I'm not saying it's exactly as what's in the movie, but I think it is based on something.
I mean, is it like as accurate as Braveheart is?
Yeah, which isn't very accurate.
Right, or Argo.
It was inspired by the 1877 Satsuma Rebellion, led by Saigo Takamori.
And does
So nothing
Tom
about a
Cruise
white guy?
play Saigo Takamori in The Last Samurai?
Cruise's character isn't based on a true story of an American soldier, but it's inspired by real history of a French army officer named Jules Brunet. He trained people, and then he died as the last samurai.
It
Does it
not
really say that?
It does not say,
say.
it does not say that.
Yeah, so I'm sure
it will
liberties
one-sided
are
Wikipedia.
taken, for sure. But I was just curious because it's definitely a war movie. It's about a war.
But you get a Tom Cruise beard.
Yeah.
The
I've
rare
only seen it
Tom
once.
Cruise facial hair.
But I did enjoy it. I think I want to rewatch it at some point.
I
All
would
right.
rewatch it.
I'm not gonna watch it, so you guys can watch it for me.
You never
You're
seen
never
it.
gonna
You should
watch it?
I have no desire to watch it
Why?
because there's
You don't like samurai films?
no, there's hundreds of other movies I'd rather watch, which are probably better and more worth my time than Tom Cruise training samurai how to be samurai.
I don't know. It's pretty good.
There's hundreds of movies
It's maybe
that
my
are better
number
than
11
The
war
Last
movie.
Samurai.
I don't know, but there's hundreds of movies I'd rather watch than The Last Samurai.
Name them.
You want me to name all 200 whatever 300 movies on my watch list because they're all movies
No.
I have added
By heart, yes.
Yes,
That's
all right,
right.
here we go.
I will say, somebody mentioned a war documentary. I obviously left all those out, but Armadillo and what's the other one that's based on
Restrepo?
Restrepo?
Yeah.
If you want to watch modern warfare movies, documentaries, that's
How many
two.
movies are on your watch lists?
Total?
Yeah.
Not a lot because I intentionally try to keep it low. 477.
Nice. Kyle.
And that's keeping it low.
290 something, almost 300.
Wow. Mine's 1377.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try and watch movies from my watch list, but my goal is to keep it under 300. I don't know why. It's an artificial barrier, but it just seems to sort of that's my my equilibrium I found.
So what does that mean? So if you're at 300 and there's a movie you decide you want to watch, you just don't add it?
Well, I've never gotten to 300, and occasionally I do reassess my watch list, and I said, okay, how long has this been on here? Why have I not, watched it since I added it?
So you'll just remove movies from your watch list without watching them?
Yeah, if for whatever reason I haven't watched it, there's a reason. So if I've lost interest in it, I don't know why I added it, then it'll come off. Yeah.
Okay.
My problem
my
is-
watch list is a living document.
I don't remember.
Well, yeah, but a lot of reasons you can't see a movie just because of access.
Yeah, but I mean, like I have Netflix DVD now, right? So I have access to most movies. And if there's a movie that's been on there, and since you can sort it by when added. So like I know the movies I added when I first got on Letterboxd. If it's 7 years later or whatever, and it's still on there, I'm like, okay, well, I haven't watched this in 7 years. Am I going to? Or are there movies I'd rather watch? And if I'm not going to watch it, I'll take off the list.
There's a shuffle feature now too.
No, yeah, I like I'll use the shuffle
That'll
sometimes.
just randomize it.
Or like sort by decade, shuffle within a decade. Try to mix it up.
My oldest movie on here, the one I added first, is called Los Angeles Plays Itself. I watched half of it. It was good. It was really good.
My earliest
This
was
is like Patreon content right here.
I know, right? The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. from
Oh, you can take
2090.
that off.
Oh, that's
You don't like it?
the Heath Ledger movie.
All right, let's end this.
Well,
Thank
I
you
gotta
for.
do I gotta do my earliest now. We can't just
Oh, let's leave it for Patreon.
no.
Wow.
We're gonna do this now. As my computer slowly loads because we're on Zoom. All right, my earliest is The Look of Silence.
All right, that was worth it.
Yep.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Thank you for listening to this episode 554 of the Cinereelists. Don't forget, video version on YouTube. Support us on Patreon. Check out after shows there if you supported the I think the $1 and up. I don't remember what the levels are, but go check it out. Patreon.com/Cinereelists. Leave us an Apple Podcast review or send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Do all of those things or just choose one of them. We'll accept either. You could also follow the podcast on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram or TikTok at Cinereelists, or you can follow me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd at Shaubin.
You can find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
Next week, we will be discussing the film Weird, the Al Yankovic story, which I'm looking forward to.
Ditto.
We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.